story takes place in the year 2563. Planet Earth has survived a war known as the Fall. There's a city floating above the Earth in the sky called Zulum, suspended by advanced engineering. And beneath is a city called Iron City. Classic futuristic story. There's a tube from Iron City's factory connected to Zulum. In the junkyard, Dr. Dyson Edo, who is a cyborg doctor, discovers the core of a female cyborg that has a brain and a core heart, but without a body. So he brings her home, and together with a nurse assistant, Edo rebuilds the cyborg with a spare robotic body in his cyborg clinic. After a small time jump, she wakes up with no recollection of any memories, not even remembering her own name. So Edo names her Alita after his deceased daughter. He then takes Alita to the city to show her around, where she sees a puppy and meets with a bad boy named Hugo, and instantly Alita develops a crush on him. In the next scene, we are introduced to Shirin, Edo's ex-wife, who is also a doctor fixing cyborgs. She tells Edo she has been working for a company that runs a competition known as Motorball, and offers Edo to come work for her boss, a guy named Victor. But Edo refuses, saying Victor is an evil man and he doesn't want to make monsters for him, and because he's a jerk since he's banging his ex-wife. Meanwhile, Alita is in the city with Hugo, who offers to play Street Mini Motorball. The game starts, and as Alita is getting used to the game, a guy named Tanji tackles her to the ground, which pisses her off. In the next round, she gets back at him by performing some badass martial art moves, showing she is not an ordinary cyborg. After the game, Hugo buys Alita chocolate because he's a player. She's enjoying the chocolate when they spot Zapan, a bounty hunter warrior with a long sword as his trademark weapon. Hunter warriors collect money by killing criminals in Iron City. Hugo tells Alita that he dreams of going to Zulum, but only the winner of the motorball competition gets to be sent up to Zulum by Vector. At night, when Alita can't sleep, she notices Edo mysteriously carrying a suitcase and going out. Curious, she follows him to an alley where Edo is preparing his weapon to ambush a young girl. But at the last moment, Alita stops him, only to find out that the girl is a criminal and Edo is a hunter warrior. Criminals surround Edo, and that is when Alita's instincts kick in. She attacks one of them, taking him out with a jump kick. She then fights the catfish girl and kills her by cutting her head off with a kick. The last criminal is a giant monster named Grishka. When the two start fighting, Alita gets a flashback, seeing herself fighting in a war on the moon. Her commander calls her 99. With newfound determination, she cuts off Grishka's arm and he flees the scene. When they get back home, Edo tells Alita that the robotic body he gave her belonged to his daughter, who was sick and couldn't walk, so he made a body for her, allowing her to walk and run again. However, she was murdered by a cyborg who broke into the clinic one night to steal drugs. Edo explains that Shirin couldn't handle their daughter's death and left him. He then reveals to Alita about her core, explaining that she has a normal teenage brain, but her heart is powered by an antimatter microreactor. This reactor is so powerful that it could potentially power the entire city for years. Edo adds that such technology hasn't been used since the Fall, suggesting that Alita is over 300 years old. In the next scene, Grishka comes to Vector and Shirin, revealing that the criminals in the city work for them. Shirin begins fixing Grishka when the villain of the movie, Nova, who resides in Zulum, infiltrates Grishka's brain. It turns out Nova has the ability to see through everyone's eye and enter their brain while being in Zulum himself. He tells Victor that Alita is the last of the Panzerkunst warriors and orders her death. In the subsequent scene, a group of masked men attack a cyborg to scrap him for parts and sell them to Vector. The leader of the group is revealed to be none other than Hugo. It turns out Vector has promised to send Hugo to Zulum once he has gained 100,000 credits. On the following day, Hugo and his friends bring Alita to a forest area outside the city. Here, they discover an old abandoned spaceship from the Fall era. Alita ventures inside the spacecraft through an underwater door and finds a berserker warrior cyborg body. However, when she brings it to Ido, he refuses to install her into the body since he wants her to have a second chance in life without being a warrior. Disappointed and furious, Alita rebels by registering herself as a hunter warrior. Alita and Hugo go to the Kansas bar to ask other hunter warriors to help her take down Grishka and Vector, but they laugh at her. Zapan, who is being a jerk, goes into a fight with Alita, but she kicks his ass, saying he's not worthy of the sword. Ido comes to the bar to bring Alita back home when Grishka enters the bar with a new upgraded body and starts fighting with Alita. Our protagonist tries to dismantle Grishka, but his new body is too strong compared to her naive body. She attacks him in an epic slow-motion scene, but he cuts her into pieces. At this moment, she gets another flashback, seeing herself training with her mentor, who shows her a figure called Nova, saying he is the ultimate enemy and must be slain. This turns a fire inside Alita. She gets on her now only hand, gathers her strength, and shoves her fist inside Grishka's eye, giving him the F word. Ido, Hugo, and this guy interfere with the fight, and Grishka flees the scene again. Ido takes Alita home and installs her in the warrior's body, stating, "No one will dare to harm her again." Delighted with her new body, she goes into the city and finds Hugo. They hang out and end up kissing. Alita tells Hugo she wants to participate in the Mortal Ball game to earn enough money so that Hugo can go to Zalem. The scene then cuts to a pre-game preparation with Ido and his nurse, and Alita writing the number 99 on her arm. In the other room, Victor offers all the other contestants $500,000 of whatever currency they're using to kill Alita. Hugo is on the phone and he says he'll be at the game, but first there is something he must do. He meets up with his friends and Tanji, telling them he wants to quit, but he's interrupted by Zapan, who attacks them, injuring Hugo and killing Tanji. It turns out Vector has hired Zapan to kill Hugo and frame him for murdering a cyborg. Now Hugo has a bounty on his head, and all hunter warriors are looking for him. However, Hugo manages to escape. Back at the stadium, Ido notices all of Alita's opponents are criminals, so he warns her to be careful. The race starts with everyone attacking Alita, but our protagonist manages to take them out one by one. By one, by one, and by one. She's still in the race when Hugo calls her asking for help, so she flees the stadium to help her boyfriend. Zapan is on Hugo about to kill him when he's stopped by Alita. However, she sees Hugo's face on billboards, labeling him as a wanted criminal. As a hunter warrior herself, she feels conflicted just as she's trying to figure out what to do. Zapan stabs Hugo. With other warriors arriving at the scene, Alita carries Hugo away to an abandoned church, where they share a romantic and sad moment. We then see Dr. Sheeran listening to the conversation. Where the hell did she come from? Anyway, touched by their plight, she decides to help the couple by having Hugo decapitated and using Alita's heart to keep his brain alive. Alita then goes out and tricks the hunters by showing them Hugo's severed head. Afterwards, Hugo's head is transplanted onto a cyborg body by Ido. He also reveals Alita that Hugo's belief of going to Zalem for 100,000 credits was a lie fabricated by Vector, as citizens of Iron City will never be able to enter Zalem. Fueled by anger and determination, Alita storms through the factory to confront Vector. She faces Grishka again, but this time she fights him and finishes him off for good by cutting him in half. Nova possesses Victor's body and tells Alita that it's not over, threatening to harm whomever she loves, including Ido. This angers Alita and she kills Victor. Ido calls Alita, informing her that Hugo has run away from the clinic. With his new cyborg body, Hugo attempts to climb a factory tube towards Zalem. Alita rushes to him and pleads with him to return with her. Witnessing this, Nova sends a massive spiked ring hurtling down the tube. Hugo is not strong enough to jump over and gets shredded. Alita manages to grab Hugo's remaining arm and uses her sword to secure a hold onto the tube. Hugo's elbow joints cannot support him and break apart, but not before he can say goodbye, leaving Alita on the tube clutching the remaining of his arm. In the final scene, Alita is shown as the star athlete of the motorball tournament. The crowd cheers for her as she points her sword towards Zalem, while Nova, who reveals himself to be Edward Norton, watches her from above. The end. Well, actually, there's going to be a sequel, so technically not the end yet.